So it strikes me that this is quite a privilege for Bob Dahl and Dave Kiersznowski and I, three business people, to be able to have a little bully pulpit to talk to pastors whom we've listened to for so long at the pulpit. So I have three, in the name of love, I have three messages I'd like to convey to the pastors out there, or even the people that are leading in some way inside their church. Three messages I'd like you to get from my talk today. One is, I'd like you to see that ministry to the people in your church about their work is, in fact, one of the richest opportunities to deeply teach the gospel and have it applied and fully embedded in their lives. See the impact of the gospel on their lives. Two, I'd like you to consider rethinking your leadership. And Crawford just mentioned that in his talk, that if your vision for your leadership of the church is for that scattered church and the work that they're doing in the world, it's not defined more narrowly as the programs that you're doing inside your church and how your church is helping you, but it's in fact for that scattered church. I think that that would be very impactful. And third, I'd like you to go away with the desire to apply the gospel more deeply to your own work. I believe the best way to relate to all the rest of us who are working out there is that you think about your work in light of the gospel, and you can share how the gospel is, in fact, changing you, informing you, redeeming you, empowering you to do the work that you've been called to do. And that becomes the common basis for which we share the gospel. So our commonality is in what we're called to do, the fact that we're sinners doing it, that we're forgiven, and that the gospel is at work both in us and through us. So Tim said, I was called by Redeemer out of working in high-tech business about 10 years ago, invited to move from California to New York to start a marketplace ministry for Redeemer. They had not started that before, but they felt like it was so important that they decided to reorganize the exec team of the church to make faith and work one of the primary ministry areas. So while there wasn't any budget when we started out, there was this commitment, even at the structural level of the church, to really focus on this. And we were able to grow that budget over time. They also committed to help me with the theology, because apart from a few seminary classes at Regent College in Vancouver, I needed a lot of help in that area. But number one, I had the opportunity to go to the framework we talked about earlier today. I felt the need, I had the affinity for this. I had, as Tim said, became a Christian mid-career. In fact, I had prayed that I was nervous about this commitment to Christ and what he might call me to do after a long career in ministry or in business. And only a few weeks after basically committing my life to Christ, I was called very suddenly to serve as the president of our company. And it was a circumstance that really made me have no doubt at all that it was God calling me into that position. So then, if that is in fact my calling, then my wrestling was, how do I do that? And how do I do that distinctively? And I didn't find so much help in the church for that. So I come to this opportunity that Redeemer offered with a decade of pent-up need for more help from the church to really think about how to live distinctively as a Christian leader. And then thirdly, I didn't have the theological competence. I thought I had the entrepreneurial competence to see what we could make out of this, mobilizing the congregation. So I had a blank piece of paper. I mean, start a marketplace ministry. I think a Redeemer would have been happy if I had just taught a few classes on calling, which as I mentioned on the panel, I could still do every Sunday of the year. But we created a vision that was much, much bigger than that. And it wasn't so much about the program as it was about the people in the congregation. We tried to say, all right, let's look at who's here. And most of them are early in their career. They're in their late 20s or their early 30s, and they're well educated, but they're not high up in their career. Where, if our church is successful with this, would we like to see them in 20 years? And what kind of people would we like them to be? So we had a journalist who worked at the Wall Street Journal who subsequently became one of the 8 editors of the Wall Street Journal. And we thought, all right, what kind of an editor of the Wall Street Journal would we want him to be? We have hedge fund managers, experienced ones and very startup ones. How would we like them to think about how what they're doing in their hedge fund is affecting the economy or the financial services industry at large? Or our educators. We had a lot of educators in Teach for America in that program, helping underperforming schools. What's the storyline of the gospel that we want them to take into that redemptive effort that's different from the redemptive mission of their colleagues who aren't Christian? So on and on, every professional area, you can see we wanted to think, what is really the impact of the gospel? It's not just having a Bible on your desk, although that's fine. It does invite good conversations, but having the gospel has to be more than that. It's not just that foxhole Christianity that, when your company's going down, you pray really hard and God answers your prayers, so then you can stand up and say, I have a God who makes my company successful. It's got to be more than that, because first of all, that doesn't happen every time you're in trouble with your company. We certainly didn't want to form a Christian subculture of journalists or financiers or educators. We didn't want to just say, all right, now you're in this room with other people just like you. Finally, we're where we belong. No, we wanted to actually send them out as different people. And even more, we didn't want, for example, devotionals that were just readapted with a language that made it more relevant to each of those industries. It had to be deeper than that. So as we talked to people, we thought, we really need to make sure that our congregation knows that the gospel is real in their work, that it really does change things. It has a power to it that really changes things, and it can really change me. So our mantra became, all right, if the gospel changes everything, how does it change our hearts? How does it change our relationships? And how does it change the world that we work in or the world that we touch through our work? So we launched the ministry. I can honestly say I did it for 3 constituencies. I did it for me because I wanted an answer to all those questions. We did it for our core team, and in the beginning that was all volunteers except me, because we thought, we've sort of got this laboratory of our core leaders inside the church, and it's a really safe place to live out what we think the gospel's calling us to do. And if we can't do it in this safe laboratory, how will we ever do it or ask our people to do it out in a much less safe world? And then we had the broader congregation. So everything that we've done, we've tried to apply to ourselves, our leader group, and the broader congregation. After some pilot programs, we basically launched a program or series of programs that could fit a wide span of our congregation. We had some people that could go really deep and commit a lot of time, especially our leaders. We had some people that could do the sort of monthly kind of thing. And we had some people that, if we were lucky if they tapped in once a year. And my analogy that I often use is, we thought of ourselves like one training runners for the marathon. Some you get 9 months before, the minute they decide they're going to run that race, and you teach them everything. You teach them how to run, you teach them how to eat, you teach them how to rest. Others we're going to get 3 weeks before the marathon when they're in a total panic that they're not prepared enough, they couldn't do it on their own, and we're going to try to give them some last-minute tips. All right, how do you make that race? And others, we're just going to be splashing water in their face as they run by and hope it gives them some appropriate refreshment and nourishment. You can find out what we did on our website or numerous other places, but 10 years later, I want to tell you a little bit about what we've learned about the gospel and how the gospel has changed us. One, the value of theology. And sometimes I think our pastors hold it close. In the business world, we talk about people who hold information selfishly and don't share it with the rest of the organization, and they use it almost as a competitive edge. And I'd like to encourage all of you who are pastors to share that theology. We need far more. If we're going to not live by rules, if we're going to actually live as people changed by the whole of the gospel, we need far more of the theology that you have, and we can handle it. Just briefly, we started about 6 years ago a fellows program. We went down to John Yates's church and a bunch of other churches to learn what they'd done in their fellows programs. And we started one to say, basically, we're going to do exec ed, nights and weekends, on theology. And it's for people who work in all other fields, and we're going to test this idea. Do they really want theology? Now, I can tell you we were very worried. We thought, what if this is just in our minds that they might like this? So would they apply? And we had a program with 24 open slots, and we were begging for 24 qualified people that had to pay us money, by the way. They had to give us one night a week, one weekend a month, one Saturday a month, and one weekend a quarter for 9 months, so pretty intensive commitment. We got plenty of applications that first year. So then our next worry was, will they all quit in October? We were doing Augustine readings and Calvin and Luther and Bonhoeffer and Hunter and Mao and more contemporary Kuyper, 100 pages a week, so a pretty intense load. And the first year we lost one person. The second year we had 60 people apply. This year, our 6th year, we've had 90 people apply, and we've increased it to 36 people. The demand amongst lawyers and doctors and teachers has been off the charts. So I say that to just reinforce that point of share your theology. So for me, the theology's made a huge difference. It's helped me go so much deeper. The gospel has given me far more courage. It's given me the courage to speak the truth in environments that might otherwise be risky. And take risks. It's given me the courage to not cling to rules, to be transparent, to be more open with my own repentance. And I think one of the key things in my 10 years has been I can't possibly be good enough to be a role model here. I have to be transparent enough so that the people in the congregation can see the gospel working on me and seeing my heart grow and change and become more loving. And if I'm not transparent about my sin and my failure, then they're never going to really see the gospel. They're just going to see me. So it's given me that hope and that courage to be more honest about my weaknesses. For our core team, that's been one of the areas that I've enjoyed the most. For our core team, I think we've been able to push the envelope on teamwork. My experience is that corporations, in fact, do a better job with teamwork than pastor environments normally do. Pastors tend to sort of be at the top of their pyramid, and there aren't a lot of other people they're partnering with, and you miss a lot of opportunities when you're trying to do it all yourself. So we've had a lot of fun really building a team and trying to dig deeper into how does the gospel change our teamwork? How do we give more grace than we're wont to do? How do we take our strength from the fact that God has called us here rather than we have to prove our success in order to be able to stay here? How do we exhibit joy in what we're doing that isn't entirely dependent on the number of people we have showing up at a particular program or applying to a particular fellows program? And how do we be risk takers? How do I give permission to our team to make mistakes, to take risks, and to come back and say, how can our conversation be more about learning than about what we accomplished? And then at the church level, and I only have a few more minutes, at the church level, I think that you couldn't be at Redeemer, even if you've never been involved in one of these programs, and not believe at this point that your work matters to God. There's enough sort of in the bloodstream of Redeemer that you just couldn't miss that part of who we're trying to be at a church. I hope that it's made us a little bit less cynical about our work. Now, sometimes you move from being cynical to being depressed about your work, and as Tim referenced a couple times earlier today, I think the work environments our people are in just get tougher and tougher. When the economy gets tighter, it's tougher. The more individualistic our culture gets, it gets tougher. The less churched we are, it gets tougher. So there's plenty of good reason to be depressed when you're out there in your various work environment. So to give hope and joy in that kind of context is a huge gift. It's a huge sign of the gospel at work. And then the last thing I want to say is that the feedback we're getting is that this is the best way to evangelize. That they're out there with their colleagues and they're often talking about what is wrong with their environment. And the topic that they can best engage people on is what it should be like. Sort of encouraging beyond that cynicism to what it could be like, what it should be like, and how does it get there. So our congregation is encouraging us to use these conversations about work and give us a place to invite, do a lecture, give us a place to invite our colleagues in and have a really honest, open conversation about what's wrong and how the gospel provides that hope. So we've seen change. I think in order for the gospel to change us, something in us needs to die in order for Christ to come in and redeem us. And just being able to look at that model of death and then resurrection is a huge sense of working, of actual power, of actual gospel working in the work that I've been privileged to do for 10 years. Thank you very much.
13 seconds early. I said David Kiersznowski of Demdeco Company is going to be telling you something about how the things we're talking about have actually informed the way in which he and his wife, Demi, manage their company. So, Dave, please. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Thank you. Well, it's always wonderful to follow the woman who founded Redeemer Center on Faith and Work, and also be to the last speaker in a longer conference. My thanks to the organizers for that. Tim talked earlier about, in certain civilizations, one way that people could be successful is to understand their role. As a business person, I feel like the best thing that I can do is try and get specific with you and give you a picture for my bride and I of the way in which a fuller understanding of theology has changed us, and also the way in which it's helped us to see differently the language that the church at times is telling us. So stick with me. I'm going to fly on this real quickly. A little bit of context. My bride and I met in graduate school. We've been married for 25 years, and we were both going to Northwestern to get our MBAs. After we graduated, we had an opportunity a couple of years after we graduated to move to Hong Kong and start a company over there. And we both grew up in the Christian tradition, but I would say we grew up in kind of a what we might call a two-chapter reality, which means the main thing about our Christian tradition was that we're sinners and Jesus died to save us, both very important parts of a fuller picture. So when we started our company in Hong Kong, our general paradigm was, let's try and be good people. Let's try and not do anything too bad in our business. We'll have a church life also, which was wonderful. And at the end of the year, we'll close our books and figure out what we can tithe. And that was fine. Those were all fine things. We moved back to Kansas City and had the pleasure of joining Christ Community Church, where Tom is our pastor. And we've been there about 16 or 17 years. And I would say after about 4 or 5 years, we started to perhaps shed an old way of thinking, and we began to see life a little bit differently. And specifically in the area of vocation, we started to understand that we didn't really need to justify what we did, because actually that's what we were made for. So we were made specifically to work, and in God's eyes, that was perfectly justified. We didn't need to find any other language to feel good about ourselves. And when that happened for us as a couple with our business, I'll date myself here a little bit. It was kind of like going from black and white to Technicolor. Those of you who are younger, you don't know that language, but some of us understand. It meant that there was a lot of color every single day in our lives, and it really changed things. I mean, the idea that Monday morning I could come in and think that we could, in the very essence of our being at work, create a sweet aroma to God, almost broke me, because for years I hadn't felt that. I had felt that, well, I'm the business guy. My job is to fund ministry. That's kind of what I do. And to think I'm the business guy, I'm an image bearer of God every single day when I go to work it was overwhelming to me. But one of the things that started to happen when we started to unlearn and learn, if you will, or really to learn a fuller theology of faith and vocation, is we started to hear language that the church was saying to us that didn't seem to line up with it. And one of the things that I want to share with you is some of the things that the church in general, some of the language that we use, because you need to know how it affects people in different vocations. So, about 8 years ago, I was in the Midwest at a confirmation celebration at a church, and I knew one of the young people who was going to be confirmed, and it was a wonderful celebration. And the pastor, who I knew to be a very, very good man, used these words. He said to this group of 100 confirmands, he said, "I am so excited about you because today is the beginning of your adult life with Christ. It's a different world for you." And then he went on to say this. He said, "What I'm really excited about is, my guess is if I look 10 years down the road, probably 10% of you are going to go into full-time Christian work." And when he said that, my heart just broke for the other 90 people in the room. It just broke. Because he didn't mean to say this, but what he said was, for you all, God's got kind of a secondary plan. You aren't image bearers fully. You're close maybe, but not fully. He didn't mean to say that, but that's what he said to the other 90 people in that room. And it just literally broke me. And I know this person to be a really, really good person, but that's the language sometimes we hear from the church of full-time versus not full-time. I'll give you a couple other examples. We use language oftentimes that talks about times in life. And we talk about things like moving from success to significance. And we create these dichotomies that say, when you're working hard in the workplace, you can work on being successful, but then you need to do something that matters, i.e. matters to God. As if they're mutually exclusive. But that's the language that we hear from the church. A month ago, I got a call from a gentleman who's at a church in Kansas City, wonderful man. He had been at an event that we had hosted at our company. When we created our company, we created a space that the community could use to host events. And he was at one of these events. He called me up. He said, I was at such and such event. You have a beautiful third floor. I wanted to ask you a question. We are actually running out of space at our church, and on Wednesday nights, we have a meeting that we want to have with men, and it's kind of a Bible study. Have you ever thought about using your building for kingdom purposes? I said, yes. Monday morning at 7 o'clock, Tuesdays at about 9. And he was serious. I mean, he kind of said, in essence, what you do for most of your time, it's fine, but it's not kingdom purposes. So you need to know that the language that we, the church, use chips away at people if it's not good language. And I would really encourage you all to think about those words and the language that we use. And I'll even throw this out, because this is language that I use. There are times those of us in the business world in particular want to cast a vision that says work at its very core is not simply financial. It's beyond that. And the language that we use oftentimes is double bottom line or triple bottom line. It's not bad language in that it tries to make the point that work at its core should not exist only in the realm of finances. But if you think about it, what that does is it really says work's value necessarily is extrinsic. That it's about the finances, and it might be about, oftentimes when you talk about a double bottom line, you're saying we do good things. We're out there doing good things. And that's wonderful. That's part of our calling as Christians. But it kind of takes away the part of our being image bearers and made to work as our God works. So anytime we use that language of extrinsic value, we chip away at the idea of being an image bearer made in God's image, and that's all, that's enough. We don't need to justify beyond that. Let me talk real quickly about some of the things that I hear from our youth, and then I want to get specific on, for Demi and I, what has this meant for us in our company. 2 or 3 examples. Almost regularly, once a quarter, I'll get a call from a college student who will say, "Hi, Mr. Kiersznowski, it's Susie so-and-so," and I usually know Susie's parents, and I'll say, "Hi, Susie, how are you?" "I'm fine, Mr. Kiersznowski. Do you have a little time to talk about international business?" "Love to, Susie. What would you like to talk about?" And she'd say, "Well, the international business part." And I said, "Okay, well, Susie, in international business, we have many different areas that we work in. Sometimes there's finance, and there's logistics, and there's marketing. Which part of international business do you want to talk about?" And Susie will say, "The international part." And we'll kind of go in this dance for a little bit. And finally, the truth will come out. Susie will say, "Well, actually, Mr. Kiersznowski, really, I want to do something purposeful in life, and I kind of want to use international business as a way to get to perhaps working for an NGO or working for a nonprofit." And that's her picture of what business is. And she's brought up in us, the church. That's what we, the church, are telling her, that go work for an NGO, go work for a nonprofit. That's where a life of purpose can be found. Another example on this, recently at a really, really good missions conference for college students, one of the speakers told this story. He said, "Today we're rejoicing for this reason. 20 years ago, there was a young couple that met at this very conference. And they both were on fire for the Lord and loved the idea of missions, and they wed shortly after the conference. But woe was them. He came from a family business and was called to be part of the family business. And so he had to set aside his desire to, or his possibility, not his desire, but his possibility of being in missions to go work for the family business. But today we give thanks because even though they're still in the family business, they are funding missions, and they're actually funding people to come to this conference." Not a bad thing in and of itself to fund people to come to this conference. That's a wonderful thing. But did you hear the line that he was saying? Woe was them. They had to go into business. And this is at what I view as one of the great conferences here in the U.S. for college students on mission. So I just want to say that our language matters. It really affects those of us in different vocations. And I would encourage us to think through that. And I actually think John Yates was dead on when he said, for pastors first, you have to decide if you believe this. Because you can't really use the language in the right way if you don't believe it. So for Demi and I, what has it meant for our company? Some of this, our learning coincided with our need to build a new corporate office. So one of the manifestations for us in thinking through this theology of faith and vocation is, what would it mean for the built environment? And so we started to think about themes when we built our new office building. We said, okay, we're made in community. The Bible says we're made in community. Got it. That's early on in the story. I guess that means that we need to be worried about community here at our office building. So we started to do things like this. We built lots of meeting space. In our previous office building, we had basically 2 conference rooms. In this one, we got 12. And we started to say, well, if we're built in community, we need to see each other. Let's put as much glass as we can throughout the building so that we can see the humanity that is here, the community that is happening. We also said at each of our cubicles, and we have cubicles, let's cut out a little side and let's put glass there so you can see, golly gee, next to me is another person who I'm in community with. We also said when we built walls around the outside, so when you walk into our building, there's a stone wall on the outside, let's have it at seating height so that people will naturally want to sit and talk with each other. And in fact, on Wednesdays, let's have an ice cream truck. We actually do this. And it's different from going to the store and buying lots of ice cream bars. It's just different from the Pavlovian response that we all get when the ice cream truck rings on Wednesdays, right? So for us on Wednesdays, at our different locations, the ice cream truck comes. And we all stop what we're doing, and we file out, and you either get the big chocolate chip cookie one or the one like Mickey Mouse with the ears. We're in Orlando, so I have to say that. And we all just stop for about 20 minutes and visit. But we're intentional about understanding we need those times to be in community. That's the way we're made. We also thought through the theme of hospitality. So if we're to be image bearers of God, if we're to have that in our company, if we're to be generous in the way God is generous, then we've got to try and model that to some degree. So for us, when you walk into our building, you're greeted by a person. And let me pause for 1 second. Our story is a very specific story. We are able to do these things. We've been fortunate enough to be able to make some of these decisions. Some people can't make the decisions we make. Their story will be unique. So I do want to say, mine's the only one that I can tell you, so that's what we're talking about. So when you walk into our company, you're greeted by a receptionist, and the receptionist will welcome you, and he or she will say, what may I offer you to drink? And we'll have hot drinks there and cold drinks there, and they'll immediately call the person that you're there to see. Then throughout the building, wherever you are, probably within about 20 yards or so, there will be a drink station. So we'll always have, I think, 27 flavors of soda, pots of hot coffee throughout the day, tea, water, and we'll always be able to offer that to our guests. And then I should have framed this up. Our business is that we're a wholesale gift company. We make things you might find in a Hallmark store or hospital gift shop. And so when you leave, we'll present you with a gift. And the gift will be wrapped nicely, and on it, it will say, just thank you for choosing us and for spending time with us today. So we try and model that issue of hospitality, and that is, we are shown generosity by our God. We should try and be hospitable to those who are in our company, or who visit our company. A couple of other themes that we thought through. One was God's gift to us of the institution of family. And we didn't want to create a place where people felt like they were torn apart, that they were, they had to choose between family and work. And so we did a couple of things. One, we understood that God brings together families in different ways. Sometimes he does it through natural childbirth. Sometimes he does it through adoption. And we realized that in our benefits, we were really generous when it came to forming a family through natural childbirth, but we weren't when it came to forming a family through adoption. So we created an adoption policy. And it was that when you go through the process of adopting, we will basically give you the time off. That would be if you were creating a family through natural childbirth, and we'll also support you with $10,000. It doesn't cover all of the expenses, but it helps in a big way. Interestingly enough, one of the people who was helping think through this at the time said, well, don't we want to cap that? Shouldn't we put a limit on it? And kind of thought that was a strange question, and I said, well, why would you want to do that? And she said, well, you don't want people to abuse it, do you? And I said, don't you? I think you do, Be nice to give someone 100 $10,000 checks if we could, if they were going to adopt 100 checks. It'd be wonderful. So we think through the area of family. Another area that we thought through when we were designing our building is that we have a population where we had lots of new moms. And some of them were choosing to breastfeed. Well, if you're a new mom in a work environment, that's a really hard thing at times because you may not be able to find a locked room, you may not be able to find a sink and things like that. So we created that in our new building. So inside of one of the ladies' restrooms, there's a separate room for moms who are nursing to be able to express and store milk. It's kind of weird talking about this in a public environment, but I'll go here anyway. In that, we've got a nice leather seat, we've got a little music system, we've got a sink, we've got a refrigerator, and we try and make sure that people don't have to separate being a new mom and having other aspects to your vocation. And the last thing in the area of family, well, there are several others, but I'm watching our time here. We understand that families want to celebrate together. And so when we put in our building, we put in a 16-foot high-def kind of movie area, and we joined basically there's a group, and I'm losing the acronym right now, that basically you can pay a fee to and show movies in your company. And we created movie nights about 3 times a year, where we will have 20 bean bags that will sit down in a big area, and we'll have larger chairs in back, and we'll have pizza and sodas and drinks over there. And we'll get people together so that the families can celebrate together and create a community. So for us, our understanding of faith and vocation meant that we had to rethink the realities of our business. There's lots of different ways we do it, but I will close with this. For those of you who are thinking through this, who are pastors, for those of you who are thinking through this, who are laity, my gratitude to you, because you know that if you really want to unleash the body of Christ, if you can help people understand that they are image bearers wherever they are, and that's good enough for them, you will do an amazing job of that.